everyone. Welcome to CMC Presents, a series of chamber music vignettes for our community. My name is Jackie Leclair. I'm an oboist, and I'd like to talk to you about some concepts I've been thinking about lately, and maybe some assumptions that I've been considering and maybe challenging in myself. I've been thinking about how we consider certain music easy and certain music difficult. We sometimes think something's possible or impossible for us to play. Some music is comfortable, and some music feels uncomfortable. And some music is familiar, and some music's unfamiliar. I'd like to propose you consider that there is no easy music, and there's absolutely no difficult music. In my view, music can't be easy, or music itself can't be difficult. That seems challenging maybe at first, but if you think about a violinist who has performed as a professional soloist the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto 137 times, that's fairly easy for that person to do again, compared to someone who's just learning the Mendelssohn, or for whom it's just difficult. So we know that the qualities of easy and difficult reside in the musician's brains. It's not contained in Mendelssohn's score. And some music, if it's very fast, say, or certain articulations, it seems like, well, look, Jackie, that's difficult. I say, well, you know, somewhere, someone can do that easily. It might be difficult for me, but somebody can play it easily. And this is true all the way up to very, very, very challenging music that we think of as challenging. So anyway, just throw that out there. And are there ways that, as individual musicians who want the best possible experience of music, are there ways we can maybe question our own assumptions, or maybe change the words we use to think and talk about music that would enhance our experiences? Anyway, I want to tell you 3 stories that have been part of my life that have to do with this topic. The first one happened when I was 25 years old. I was living in Spain, northern Spain, Oviedo. I was in an orchestra, and I had a month off vacation. So I figured, okay, great, I'm going to learn a solo piece. Fantastic. I chose the piece Distance by Toru Takemitsu. Toru Takemitsu was a Japanese composer. He lived from 1930 to 1996. And I figured, well, he's famous, this'll do. And the piece is called Distance, and it's for oboe with or without sho, which is spelled S-H-O. There's a thing over the O like that. The sho is a traditional gagaku, or Japanese court instrument. And a sho is a kind of a special harmonica. You hold it like this, and there are bamboo pipes of different lengths, lots of them, going up like this. And you blow into it, and like a harmonica we're familiar with, the sho makes sound when you exhale into it, and also when you inhale, so you can make continuous sound. And the sho can produce single notes and up to all kinds of complex chords. So it's a really magical instrument, none of which I knew at that point. I was 25. So I figured, all right, I can do this without sho, so I'm going to learn it. So I went about learning it. The piece Distance, it contains a whole lot of modernist musical language for the oboe, like glissandos and multiphonics and double trill, just new music stuff, no problem. However, it also contains quite a few passages where the oboist is required to sing while playing, and playing fancy stuff, and also singing with the voice. This is extremely rare. Why? Well, because when one is playing the oboe, very, very little air is traveling into the oboe. You play the oboe mostly with air pressure. Very, very little flow of air. In fact, it's not enough flow of air to sing. When you're playing the oboe and you try to sing, it might sound a little like not useful. So what one does is one allows air to escape around the reed, so you make space between the embouchure and the reed. But that's kind of like driving down the highway and taking your hands off the wheel. It's sort of okay, but not really great. So I tried. I figured, all right, well, I can do this. And I think I kind of got mad at the piece. I didn't get mad at Mr. Takemitsu, it wasn't personal. But I felt maybe adversarial with the music. Like, I'm trying and I can't do it and this is crazy. All right, forget it. And I actually took my pencil and I wrote in the performance notes, the date is April 18th, whatever. It's 2001. And with a vindication, I wrote, I really tried to learn this, and I think it's not reasonable, it's not possible. Ugh. I was really uncomfortable with it. So, wouldn't you know, I moved back to New York City, and about 8 years later, I was probably about 33, the phone rang, and I picked the phone. Hello. This is the Columbia University Medieval Japanese Society. I had been recommended to them as an oboist to hire, and they were doing a special concert in the rotunda of their library there to honor the memory of Toru Takemitsu, who was the only person to whom Columbia University had awarded an honorary doctorate posthumously. He passed away right before they were going to award it to him, so they awarded the honorary doctorate to him afterward. And this was a special event. For the event, they were flying in the world's most distinguished gagaku ensemble, these amazing musicians. Would I perform distance with their show player, one of the world's most distinguished show players? So what did I say? I said, yes, I will do that. Thank you so much. So I painted myself into a very, very interesting corner. I probably had a couple of months, I don't remember, but it wasn't a week. It was a couple of months probably to learn it. And I had the following experience. I took out the score, I sat in my studio, otherwise known as my bedroom, and day after day, I learned it, but then the part where it's singing and playing, right? I tried day after day to do it. I failed day after day. And I just sort of smiled like, oh, okay, that totally wasn't it. That's not it at all. And I tried to think it really hard, like, okay, what would this be like? What's it going to sound like? I sang, away from the oboe. I learned, to sing the part. I just tried and tried and tried and tried. And every day it was a complete failure. And I just sort of like, oh, total failure. Okay, moving on. And the next day I'd come back. And it was, I wish I'd kept a journal, because what happened is I just was complete failure, complete failure, complete failure, complete failure, complete failure, and at a point, boom, I could do it. There was no learning curve. I didn't appear to be improving at all. And just one day, I did it. And from then I could do it. It was a bit of a shock, actually. And the experience was amazing. We met the gagaku musicians when they arrived in New York City. The Columbia University people invited me to this East Side restaurant. They all seemed like superheroes to me, very elegant, very quiet. Wow. And I rehearsed with this woman. She was tiny. I wasn't sure if she was 20 or 70. I couldn't tell. We didn't speak. We rehearsed. I felt so awkward and American, and I was just doing my very, very best to try to live up to what would seem like an enormous, imposing situation, this working with this famous person. And we performed. And for the piece, interestingly enough, the oboe is right in front of the audience, and the show player is as far away from the audience as she can be. So it's this showing a distance between East and West, the modern oboe and modern Western musical language, and the traditional show with traditional Japanese musical language. So it went well, and it was tremendous. It was a tremendous honor, really gratifying. But that was the experience of just absolute failure, but smiling, thinking it hard, trying and trying, keeping, humor, funny, and then boom, all of a sudden, without warning, I could do it 100% and could after that. The second story I'd like to tell you has to do with a whistle tone. It's in the piece Damathen, which is spelled Dmaathen, which is not a Greek word, but it's by the Greek composer Ioannis Xenakis, Xenakis. Wonderful composer. He was no longer with us. I think he lived, what did he live, 1922 to 2000 maybe? I should know that, sorry. Wonderful composer. I was lucky to meet him, work with him a few times. This piece is for oboe and percussion. And I was a big fan, still am, of the music of Xenakis. So I just learned it when I was about 28, 29. And in it, there's a one note that lasts about 10 seconds, and it's notated as F sharp, 3 ledger lines above the staff, 2 octaves higher than that. There's a bracket and a 15. And I was like, what? The oboe kind of stops not much higher than that. So I was just kind of flummoxed by that. Like, what could that possibly be? It says next to the notation dent, D-E-N-T-S, you use your teeth, which is fine. I was familiar with that. For very, very, very high notes, you can put your teeth on the reed and create a seal and thereby get a really high note. But I just had no idea. I really had no clue. So it's a long note, about 70% of the way through the piece, and then it happens again. When it's a long note, there's an ossia. You can play super, super high C sharp, which is the C above that F sharp, which is sort of doable. All right, but then the whistle tone happens again at it's the last note in the cadenza, right before a couple minutes long coda. And there's no ossia there, so you have to play it. So I thought, well, no idea. And this is pre-internet. We weren't listening to music on the internet, I don't think, at that point. We're talking, this was 1996. So I didn't have a reference, I couldn't hear anybody playing it. There wasn't a recording that had it. And Burkhard Gleitzner, so I learned the rest of the piece. Burkhard Gleitzner, he used to play under Kurt Masur in Leipzig, the orchestra in Leipzig, in then East Germany. Well, he retired, and he played a whole bunch of contemporary music. I guess he secretly loved contemporary music. And he came out with a CD that included this piece, Demathen. And that's when we went to CD stores and paid money for the music, and I had the CD in my hot little hand and ran home, threw it in my boombox, and I just couldn't wait. I was so excited. What's going to happen? What's this note? This mystery high note. And it went and went and went. And it got to that part where there's the 10-second long version, and he played the ossia. He played the high C. I was like, But then, after another 60 seconds or so, he played the cadenza, and then he played this whistle tone. It's kind of like if you did this on the violin, like really, really high. It's sort of off the keyboard of the piano. And I heard this sound produced by an oboe, and it went into my brain like a imaginary ice pick. I just suddenly got it, and I turned off the boombox, went into my studio, aka my bedroom, picked up kind of a stiff reed that I figured would do it, put the reed in the oboe, fingered a high F sharp, put my teeth on the reed, bam, made this crazy whistle tone. First try. And I thought, wow, well, there you go. And it just sort of illustrated, you know what? If you can't imagine it, you can't play it. And that was just a really, really vivid example of that. Once I had it in my imagination, boom, no problem. And the third story is about a piece I just learned and I just recorded. It's I'm finishing a CD for pieces of music for English horn alone. So I'm the only musician on the CD, and 7 separate pieces. One of them I commissioned from Carola Obermüller. She's a German composer. She teaches composition at the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque for many years. She's about 42 years old. I met her probably 25 years ago. Does that make sense? Well, 20 years ago, when she was a doctoral student at Harvard, so however long ago that would be. And I was in residence there, and I played her music at that time, and we've been, not close friends, but we've been friendly ever since. And she recently finished this piece. I got the score in March, and I recorded it May 15th. Well, this piece I've never played anything like this, ever. And I've never heard of any music like this on the English horn. It's very clearly notated. It's a wonderful piece, and it contains lots of microtones, quarter tones, but then smaller increments between half steps, which require all sorts of different Martian fingerings I've never done before in my life, and also embouchure adjustments that are unusual. So microtones, lots and lots of multiphonics. And some of them are tricky because you have to half hold notes, fingers you don't normally half hold. So you have to sort of relearn all that. Glissando, pitch bending, all kinds of stuff. No singing while playing, I'll note. And I looked at this 8 weeks ago when I got the final score, and I thought, wow, I can't play anything I see. Imagine that. And so I got to work, and I really tried to take all my good advice about how to practice, found what I could do, did it successfully, figured out what fingering am I going to use, what embouchure am I going to use, how does this tuning sound, I need to memorize the intonation. And I really took care that every day, even though I could only play 1% of the piece, say, I really said, yay, 1%, that's awesome, that's so great. And every day I would stop practicing and think, you know what? I've learned this that I couldn't do yesterday, and now I can do it. And so I really, really kept a laser focus on these minute bits of the piece that I was actually playing successfully. And I figured I'm just going to move this mountain with a teaspoon, and I'm going to record this in 7 weeks. I'm going to record this in 6 weeks. And you know how deadlines are, they're coming up. And I also just sort of had the attitude that I can do this. I love this music. I'm friends with it. I'm learning it. I will be friends with it. You have to know it to be friends with it, right? And it was an amazing journey. I mean, it really felt like a journey. I mean, I'm not just trying to be poetic. It was a journey. About a week before the recording session, even though it was really it still felt gnarly and sometimes really getting lost, but then being fun. Sometimes, you know when you're trying to screw a top onto a jar and you just can't find the threads? You have to keep unscrewing and trying. That's what my brain felt like. Like, wait, no, that's not, wait, no. And then the next day I'd be able to do it fine. So it was really like, wow, brain burning new passages in my brain. But I kept it positive. I focused almost exclusively on what I could do, even though it wasn't much at first. I focused on celebrating my accomplishments. I would sit here in this chair and be like, yay, you are doing great, you are going to get this. Cheering myself as a strategy, because I had to learn it, And so I focused on getting sort of ready, starting about 7 days before the recording session. And I sat up in bed on May 15th and I said out loud, today's the day. And went into the recording session here, a studio in Montreal, and I recorded it. It's done now. We'll do some final edits on June 2nd. But that was an amazing experience where it was quite impossible. The piece I was looking at 8 weeks ago, I couldn't play hardly anything that I could see. They're very, very, very unfamiliar. And now today I can play it all. And it's not that I'm special. All the things I've told you about, this would not be an interesting conversation if it was like, oh, well, Jackie Leclair, she's different. No, I'm not. What's interesting about this is that I think we're all like this, that we tend to focus on failure. We tend to focus on the negative, the negativity bias, all that sort of thing. And we're drawn naturally, because it's biologically advantageous to know the bad stuff, and the good stuff's not that important. So biologically, we're wired to focus on bad, wrong, terrible. It's not you, it's us. We're all like that. It's great for staying alive in the woods. If you're living in the wild, you'll remember where the coyote lives. Great. But negativity bias is really bad and destructive for learning music. We probably all have that sort of feeling, more or less. So this last experience, the Obermüller piece that I just recorded, I felt like I took my own advice and just relentlessly kept things positive and made little teeny tiny baby steps and celebrated every minute accomplishment. And when things seemed to go backwards, where I felt really uncomfortable, like once in a while I would have a day where I would just be like, well, that's okay, haha, isn't that interesting? And sure enough, the next day I'd get back on track and be able to screw the top on the jar again. So I thought I'd share these 3 stories with you. They just happen to be 3 things I've done. And we've all had the experience of taking the impossible, making it possible. That's how every day in childhood is, isn't it? That's what we're learning machines. So as musicians, I just wanted to then refine the topic in my head of what are some things that I think, oh, the Strauss concerto is hard. Well, why do I think that, What is a certain orchestral excerpt? Is the Brahms trio harder for you than something else? And I just think as a community it might be interesting to really reconsider easy and difficult, and maybe indeed just not use them. There's uncomfortable. But you know what? You're uncomfortable. The Shostakovich is not uncomfortable. So in that sense it's more accurate, right? Oh, I'm uncomfortable with that first violin part. Right, but then you're going to become more comfortable. So it's not a quality that Shostakovich possesses, which is great because it lets Shostakovich sort of not have that contamination, does it? I was uncomfortable with the Obermuller. I couldn't imagine the Xenakis. I couldn't imagine the Takemitsu. But then I transformed my thinking. In the case of the Takemitsu, I had to. I painted myself into a corner and accepted a job. They're going to pay me money to do it. Xenakis, I couldn't imagine it, and then I heard Burkhard Gleitzner do it. There you go, and then I could do it. And the Obermuller, as I said, it was just this moving a mountain with a teaspoon, happily with humor and optimism. So I think to maybe just notice what our habits of thought are, and if we're assigning any qualities to music that might actually just be us. And I think if we do that, to realize, now it's not that Brahms trio is hard. It's not. Brahms trio is not hard. I feel X, Y, and Z about it, but you know what? I can transform that because I'm in charge of me, and I can choose my thinking, and I can choose my thoughts, and I can change my thoughts. So I've just been thinking about that, and I had this really kind of dramatic recent experience over the past 2 months that was extremely rewarding and very fulfilling. So I wanted to talk to you about that, share those stories with you, and I'd love to hear your stories. So thanks so much for listening to me. You can find out more information about this series at cmceast.org, which is our website. Bye! Happy music making!